Hey there everyone, what's up? Back today with another impressions video. And today, talking about, well, I want to say it's a non-handheld game, which is recently has been rare. But we're looking at this game right here for the PS3. This is Zillions of Enemy X, or ZX as it's more commonly known, I guess, or ZX if you want to read it that way. But Zillions of Enemy X here is released by Nippon Ichi software in Japan, and it is based on the card game of the same name, I guess. This game is, I don't really know how to explain it. It is a card battle game. If you've ever played the Capcom versus SNK card battlers, I think it's called, on the Neo Geo Pocket or on the DS. It's pretty similar to that in some ways, and completely different in others, but I'll get into it. This game right here came out not too long ago, a couple months ago, and it didn't sell so well, and I don't know, I don't think the card game is incredibly popular, maybe. I don't know. It's not like Magic the Gathering big, but it's so probably the people who are playing the card game and are interested in the PS3 game are probably not not a whole lot, which is evident by the kind of lackluster sales this got. But the game itself is pretty interesting, actually. They classify it as a card battle RPG, which would make it different from the Card Battlers game, the Capcom SNK one, where essentially in that game you have a character in an overworld and you kind of walk around and you just talk to people. You talk to somebody and you have a battle. And this game is different from that in that the battles are actually like a strategy RPG and actually require strategy, which makes the game somewhat difficult at points. It is challenging at points. Especially on the first run through, and I'll get into that. But let me explain the very basics of the game. Like I said, it's a card battle RPG. So essentially you have a deck of cards and each card is one of these things called a Zex, or one of the zillions of enemies. And you use them to battle other people, or other monsters. And there's a difference. There's two kind of main types of battles that happen. So you have like summoner battles, which are you're fighting another person and they're throwing out cards at you, and the cards are essentially these monsters. But you also have monster battles where you'll run across monsters that show up and they're not summoned by cards. So there's three monsters and you'll fight three monsters instead of fighting a summoner who can summon like monsters over and over again, basically. So the rules are actually a bit different for depending on the type of battle you're doing. For a monster battle, if you defeat the monsters, you win. It's easy. If you fight a summoner, you have to defeat the summoner, so you have to clear out some of his cards and attack the summoner directly, like a normal kind of card battle game if you've played any before. But there are some elements to this that are different from just the card battling, which is fun. The card battling is actually fun. You do have to think about building your deck and how you want to like spec it, and you have characters you can choose, and they have special abilities depending on the types of cards you use. So you actually do have to think about it quite a bit to make a viable deck. And there's actually some special battles in the game that will require you to make a special deck only for that battle. I had to do that twice in the game because a normal deck doesn't handle the kind of specialty deck that's created and thrown at you. But I'll talk about all that stuff more in depth. So I'm not just glossing over it right now, but I am gonna move back to the strategy RPG part of the game, which is when you get into a battle, there's story battles. And there are 5 characters in the game, and each of them have 10 story battles. And the story battles are actually pretty interesting in that you have these characters, and they kind of interact with each other in the story, but they all have their own separate battles. So you have 10 story battles for each character, and they kind of cross over. But what happens is you'll go through the game once with one character in his 10 battles, and then you'll go to the other character and you play through the same game again with those characters. It's not the same maps or anything in most cases, but you do have kind of a crossover. So you can't get the full range of the story without playing all 5 characters, but there is a bit of crossover. So sometimes you'll get like one character you used previously will show up again in the story, and you'll get like the other half of the story. What was happening? Where were these characters before they met the other character in the other part of the story? So it's actually pretty interesting. It does make you want to play it again, so you can fill in like who are these extra characters and where do they come from and what are they doing and why are they here? Because sometimes in the story when you play through the first time, you don't really understand what's going on. Like you kind of get this thing like, I kind of understand what's happening, but who are these people? What are they doing? How do I know them? Where are they coming from? Why are they here in this specific place? And it seems a bit confusing at first, and then you play through as another character and you start to understand like, oh, okay, this is where it's happening. These people are all meeting up here. So possibly you could play through the game in a way that you play each character's chapters one by one. So like you could play first chapter for one character and then first chapter for the next character and so on and so forth, and just like go 1 1 1 1 1 for each character and then do that again for each subsequent chapter. And it would probably make more sense to play it that way now that I think about it, but in my case I just went through each character separately, and it kind of filled in the backstory in increments, which is, also viable, but again, your first playthrough probably won't make a ton of sense. But you do get that part. But with each character you have these kind of maps that you go to for each character story. And the maps are important because that's where the battles take place. There'll be you have a character icon and you have, the monster icons or summoner icons on the screen. And you have to clear the map of these icons to win. Or, there's some maps that have different objectives. So sometimes it's like go to this point before dying, or you can kill all the units, whatever. You have options. But the map is actually pretty important to the game because it's kind of it's a hex-based map. So, and what happens is when you move over a square, it lights up a color, blue for you and red for the enemy. And depending on how many squares you have lit up, the power of your cards will go up. So they'll have more attack power and more life, or you'll get some other types of bonuses. And with that, it's important because the enemies also get those bonuses for lighting up squares, and there's always more enemies than you, so they can light up squares a lot quicker than you. So you have to think about your positioning on the map, and you have to think about lighting up squares that cut off the connection between the lit up squares of the enemies. So beyond just the standard like how you build your deck and how you fight your enemies, you have to think about your positioning on the map, because sometimes battles can be made ridiculously difficult, like unbeatably difficult, if you don't pay attention to the kind of highlighting of the map and how it works with your character and the enemies, because the enemies get a much bigger bonus than you do from lighting up squares on the map. And they're not squares, they're hexes, but whatever. And so when you go through this game, it's not easy. It's one of the things I enjoyed about this game was that it was actually pretty challenging. I don't actually think there are difficulty settings. I don't remember. There wasn't in the beginning, at least. It might have unlocked, but I didn't check that. But I played on the normal difficulty, whatever it is, and there are points in the game where I had to do battles multiple times because I couldn't win. Where like you'll get to a point, usually not in the story. The story battles are actually pretty easy for the most part, and I'll add an addendum to that, because the first character you play through all the way will be easy. It will be a little bit more difficult for the story battles, but what happens is when you continue on with the story battles, you start unlocking side battles. They're like side quests you can select from a menu, and the pace that they unlock is like usually about for the first character, it's usually about 3 side quests per story mission you clear. And the side quests quickly outpace the difficulty of the main battles. So you'll find that like you'll get to a point in the game where like you've unlocked all these side quests, and if you try to do them, they're way too difficult. You can't do it for a lot of them right off, because you either don't have the proper strength of cards to get into the battle, or your character is too weak, like he doesn't have enough life. So you have to kind of play through the game a bit more to get a bit stronger to get through those side battles. And what'll happen is if they're challenging enough that you can play those, and if you start playing the side battles more than the story battles, the story battles become like almost ridiculously easy. Like you can just blow through them because you're used to much tougher battles than the side battles. But yeah, if you just played the story battles, it would be mildly difficult. There aren't many that are really like a walk in the park, but especially the final boss battles sometimes get pretty difficult, which is good. It's something I enjoy. Usually I play games because I enjoy a challenge to the game, and this game actually offered me a challenge to a point where I was pretty happy with it, and it made me keep playing even though like I had already, when you get to like the 4th or 5th character and you're playing through the same story again just from a slightly different angle, it's kind of like your want to hear the story is a little bit off, because you pretty much know where everyone was by that point, but you still have one more character to go. But the challenge of it actually makes you want to play through a bit more, which is nice. But another thing with this game, beyond the main story, is those side quests. And those side quests are really interesting, because some will open up after you clear the game once. So after you beat the game, you get some high level difficulty side quests, and then each character has their own specialty side quests that they'll unlock by playing through the game with that character. So you get a lot of side quests. I think there's it's 35 or 40 side quests plus the 50 main quests 10 for each character, so 50 main quests. So there's a good amount of gameplay in this game. I'm not sure how long it took me to beat everything, but it was 40 or 50 hours. It was pretty long, actually. So, the game is actually pretty good value for what it's offering, and the battles are fun, and the overall story is, relatively interesting. The characters are pretty interesting, actually, too, because they're not generally like stereotype characters. There's actually points where there's like a black character with an afro, and he's like a huge guy, but he's not like your kind of stereotype character, in that he's like really timid and weak. And it's funny because like people make fun of him in the game all the time, because they're like, you're this big guy and you have this huge afro, and like you look real tough, but then when you talk, you're really like timid and you're weak. You're definitely like you're not what we expected. And he's always like squealing and kind of running away. It's pretty funny that it's that character. So they're not really like stereotypical, so it's interesting in that sense. But you will get like some extra bonus stuff in those side quests, which is worth looking at. You get kind of story elements, and you get characters from other NIS games. You get Asagi, of course, who shows up and wishes she was the main character of the game, which is the running joke in all Nippon Ichi games for who knows how long, 10 years. But that character shows up, and some angel characters show up. It's not like Flan or something. It's I can't remember her name. It's not like from D2 either. It's not Cecil, or it's something else. I can't remember who it is. And there's Izumi, who shows up from other Nippon Ichi games. So it's actually pretty interesting to... Oh, there's actually like a huge Prinny battle in the game too, which is one of those battles where I had to make a special deck, because the Prinny cards in this game are ridiculous. Like, if you had to fight a lot of Prinnies, which you do in this battle, you have to fight a ton of Prinnies. It's a hard battle. They're hard. that one I really had to think about a deck for that one, because it was a pain. But that was the thing where it was one of the most satisfying battles to win. And there's like a one final boss, kind of hidden boss after you beat the game in the special battles. He's like Mr. Ignition or something, and he's like crazy powerful. But in that one also took me I had to make a special deck for. So overall, the game itself it's like an interesting cross between like your standard kind of card battle game and a strategy RPG that actually requires strategy. So it's definitely a game I would recommend. I don't even think never mind. I was gonna say you could probably play it without Japanese, but you wouldn't be able to read any of the card effects, so it would be probably pretty difficult to make a solid deck without kind of assuming what the abilities did through trial and error, which would make it probably not fun. So anyway, here, Zillions of Enemy X. Good game, probably never going to be localized. Didn't sell that well, and it's too bad because this is actually a pretty fun game. It's one of the recent games I've had a lot of fun with. So if you're interested, maybe you could check it out if you can find card translations, maybe, or find some really or have some Japanese ability. If you do, I would recommend getting it if you like strategy RPGs or card battle RPGs, and if you like both, it's kind of a perfect game for you. But yeah, so this video is long, and probably no one's gonna watch it because it's Zillions of Enemy X. But yeah, if you've made it this far, thumbs up to you too. So yeah, I guess I will see you guys next time.